What's good, people in the world today? It's RahMega here, and today what I have for you is the very first video in a series I plan to drop for the Star Atlas community on a weekly basis. So the title is called Star Atlas Chatter, where throughout the week I'll be lurking in the Star Atlas Discord, primarily the Foundation Room, listening in on the Atlas Brews when we have town halls, and more. Wherever there is that sweet alpha that we all want to know, and it's coming, the answers are coming directly from the Star Atlas team. I'll be plucking those out, trying to put together in a nice, concise format for you on a weekly basis, just to make sure you don't miss anything. Okay, so that's the setup, and without further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, so now I have here a picture of a claim stake. This is probably like a tier 5 claim stake, because that was the theme of this week, claim stakes. And you're gonna see why. So first off, I have to start with the big news that took the community by storm, the stopping of the DAO providing an infinite supply of the R4s, as we all know now. It caused a big uproar. There were many who were asleep, and by the time when they woke up and they heard the news, all the R4s were gone off the market and the prices had jumped up. So they weren't too happy about that, understandably, you know. So the first thing I gotta do is talk about that. And here's what Michael Wagner responded, the CEO of Automata. It was heavily debated internally if we provided a window to purchase unlimited during the pre-announcement. Everyone would have just maxed out their purchasing power and we wouldn't even need to make the transition. It could have significantly disrupted the economy going forward as well, because it could have possibly upset the balance as we move into sage extraction crafting. This was the only way. So, and to be honest, I agree with it. I thought it was great. I was surprised. I wasn't shocked, because this is something that we knew was going to happen at some point in time. So I was glad they did it. And also, kudos to the Star Atlas team for actually sticking to their guns on this one, because there's been times in the past where maybe a few loud voices in the minority has caused them to backtrack and kind of go back on what they said they were going to do. And it's one of those things, because sometimes you want to listen to the community as well. There's been other times where a large part of the community has made their voices known, and they did go ahead and correct things, for the community. So, but in this particular instance, I think it was a great move, and I think the large portion of the community would also agree with that. So also just want to throw in here, in case some people's minds were turning and are curious if there was maybe any insider trading type activity going on. Michael didn't want to address that, and he said also, I would take a moment to emphasize here that we do maintain a company policy surrounding material non-public information, and our team was on a blackout for trading of any R4 leading up to this change, at least anyone who was aware of the change. We did try to keep this information in a tight circle internally. Okay, so that's just kind of a little preamble there. Let's get into some of the questions that have come across during the chatter in the past week. Here we have, is there a chance the bonus emissions from claim stakes will be reduced when new gameplay elements come in, such as mining, or should we expect the new claim stake emissions until score is officially turned off? Okay, Chris, who's the director of game economy, he writes, good question. Hard to answer. We will certainly have to deprecate claim stakes and score as we develop out other programs. Right now, claim stakes are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but as we introduce Sage crafting loops, obviously Sage will have an opportunity to take the spotlight in terms of production. In terms of adjusting the claim stake production again, we have no plans to do that now, but that could change. So, and he goes on. So that's just a little tidbit, key information that you want to stay on top of. Okay, another great question from the community. Can we craft claim stakes in the future? So this is interesting here. First, Chris jumps in and he says, there is no plan to craft claim stakes in the future. They're more like a deed to a house, so crafting seems weird. However, Chip, though, Chipto, I actually put an error here. I got to fix that. Actually, Chipto jumped in and he said, last time I recall answering questions regarding claim stakes was in December 2022 when the Sage game manual was released. I confirmed claim stakes would be craftable and upgradable. Also, terrestrial buildings would be craftable and upgradable. This is all assuming the full release of claim stakes functionality in Sage. However, we have significant time until that release. Still need to release Sage Resource Extraction and Crafting Rec, which we know is the next major release coming, and likely another release to introduce combat after that before we have the foundation in place to consider introducing claim stakes in Sage. So the way we have it set up now with the claim stakes generating R4 and being able to play Escape Velocity, EV, to generate and scan for your own free resources. You just got to put the time in the clicks and so forth. This is going to be in place for a while here. I'm anticipating at least probably 2 quarters at minimum, going into maybe even next year. Maybe sooner, but we'll see. Okay, next one. What will be the next smooth transition that the Star Atlas team is planning regarding Sage? Anything you can say on that now? And I chuckled when I was reading this in the foundation room. It's an excellent question. It's a little passive aggressive though, which I kind of like that. It was pretty cool. And Chris took it in stride as well. He says, next smooth transition, haha. Tough question, I don't know. Deprecating score, probably. Okay, that's alpha. That's something you want to stop and take a note of. Okay, so score is going to go away, which means how we're getting Atlas now by simply enlisting our fleet and pretty much passively earning Atlas. That's going to go away, and we're going to talk about that more. There's some more commentary about that as well. But these are the things you want to start thinking about. If you missed the boat on having enough R4s for your fleet and so forth, that's in the past now. So now we got to be like, okay, looking forward, how are we thinking about this stuff? So we got to stay sharp, okay? That's what Michael Wagner said a long time ago, even before we had everything that we have now, as far as Sage and score and all this kind of stuff. I think all we had at the time was just posters, but it was one of those, maybe it was a town hall or something like that. And Michael was like, he said, the game is afoot. The game has already begun. So if the game is afoot, my job is to make sure you don't get caught out there half-stepping, all right? So let's get back into it. Another cool question that came out for you, Pierce R8 owners. We have a question here. Can it refuel itself from its own fuel modules? Bumpy's chimes in, yes. Well, it would just drain from total supply is the current thinking. Can it perform repairs on itself? Not with its repair arms, but repair drones, it should be able to. Does it have a hanger slide? Nope. And can it perform some ship breaking? I take that as ship munching, salvaging, things like that, crunching down ships that are maybe abandoned or halfway destroyed and producing resources that can then be refined and things like that. So he does answer yes to that. So that's how I take that question. I think that's what he was getting at. Let me know in the comments if you see that differently or maybe you've heard something else as well. Okay, the next one. How planetary resource extraction will work. So Chris chimes in on this one. Planetary resource extraction, the vast bulk of mining in the game, will be done via claim stakes, mining drill setups. Ships will be needed to transport that cargo. Some ships will have specific mining capabilities, and all ships can mine at an asteroid for the basic game building blocks. Okay, so good information to know. Will only high-tier claim stakes be able to extract the rarest of resources? Great question, and I love the answer here. This is important. Chipto says, we wouldn't make it such that tier 5 claim stakes are ever the only way to get a certain rare resource. No, just like we wouldn't make it such that you can only get a certain resource by owning a capital ship. However, it may be easier to acquire rare resources with higher class assets. Key, all right? Okay, is there anything that can be said about player-owned space stations, those in the marketplace? And I love this question because I was curious about it as well. Not a lot of talk about PlayStations, and I think that the functionality or the utility of them have changed somewhat from the beginning that they were first mentioned, but this is how Bunthius talks about it now. They almost became a part of faction claims, but we didn't have time to work in it. But it's part of the eventual supply chain for resource extraction and crafting. Technically, faction claims is using public refineries, and when we turn on player-owned refineries and cargo platforms, then players will need space stations for convenience. So again, we're thinking forward here. So let's make sure, depending on your gameplay style and what's going to be your professions that you choose to focus on, if you want to be in mining, make sure you have your mining drill, power plants, and space stations to make it all run smoothly, efficiently, which is going to, be better, economically for you. Bunthius continues, yup, you also be able to add cargo decks, fans. Each deck plus the hub will be upgradable. And yes, defensive decks as well. Okay, more on escape velocity. How long will escape velocity extend to? This is a key one here. I don't know if you missed this one during the week, but Wagner chats here. EV is being extended to account for econ change recently implemented, and it's also been quite successful for user acquisition and engagement, and will run up to or until we close the rolling out resource extraction and crafting. We haven't determined specifically the deprecation date, but it could be anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks in advance of REC. So someone asked next, as a follow-up, why deprecate EV weeks before REC? Wouldn't this action cut off R4 supply during the interim? Right? This is the kind of question we all want to know, right? The answer to this question. So Wagner jumps in, he says here, there are reasons I'm not at liberty to go into at this time. So that can mean anything. I don't know what that means. But the moral of the story is make sure that you have your R4s stockpiled enough at least for 30, 60, 90 days. So whether that means maybe now's the time to get some claim stakes if you haven't already, or you may need to plan some time to jump in EV and start scanning around and getting some free R4s. Or the next option is just going to be able to, buy the R4s at the current market rate, in the secondary market. So, but you want to have that because there's going to be a time, they're letting us know that, it could be cut off and then there's not going to be anything else for maybe 3 weeks. So if you say 3 weeks, I'm thinking maybe it could be 6 weeks, so you never know. So just be prepared. That's the bottom line. Okay, so now let's jump into the Atlas Brew number 67 that just passed this past Wednesday. Okay, so first off, most of the commentary that was in the Atlas Brew, it was primarily focused on the transition and the reasoning and explaining behind it. So that took up the bulk of the time. We actually didn't even have a Q&A section at the end, like many of them do. So you didn't miss too much. However, there was a few key comments that perked my ears up as far as coming from that play to earn economy, business-minded, empire building mindset, which is where, just as a side note, most of my content is going to be centered around play to earn, play and earn, however you want to say it. The idea that you could have fun playing a game and earn some money. To me, that's best of both worlds. So here, you don't have to shy away from it. If that's you, come on in. You are welcome here. That's what we're going to be talking about, and always listening to these things and watching out for stuff that affects the decisions that you need to make going down the line as we're moving to Sage heavily, and of course, ultimately into Unreal Engine 5 gameplay, where we have everything going on at that point. So let's jump into what Chris talked about. Chris talked about the R4 transition as being just a piece of the puzzle in the next iteration of Sage, and with it will come a bunch of new changes again and again after that. And eventually Score will be gone and we will move into a fully fledged MMORPG economy, possibly even beyond the level of EVE Online. That's what I'm talking about. Bring it on. Okay, so he goes on to explain that the next thing to go is Atlas, and we kind of talked about this earlier. Currently in Score, Atlas emissions are constant, but they will change. Soon, TM, acquiring Atlas will depend on your performance, ability, and skill. Okay? So we're thinking forward now, right? We can't do anything about the past now. We're thinking forward. RIP Atlas. At least as easy as we're getting it now. You're gonna actually have to play the game. And also think about it, because lending your assets and having, like scholars and things like that, like from other games, that's not gonna be coming anytime soon. It doesn't look like. And when it does, it's probably gonna come from a third party. When you're listening to, when Michael Wagner talks about it as well, they're not really, don't seem interested in creating that whole type of, format or platform rather to lend out your assets and things like that. So that's probably gonna come from a third party. So think about Atlas. How are you gonna get your Atlas? Okay, next Santi asks, how important are claim stakes going to be for the future game and economy? Again, claim stakes. Okay, Chris explained, and I'm summarizing here, that claim stakes are plots of land that are the primary production entities in the economy. There will be special types of ships that can do the same as well. Also, the mining drill, power plant, and space stations are all required for the claim stakes system to work optimally. Chris also expects that claim stakes, especially the higher tiers, will primarily focus on extracting rare resources and creating massive mining operations that produce star-based upgrade materials, consumables, and maybe asset production in the future, depending on the direction the devs go. Ultimately, as your ships get bigger, claim stakes get bigger. As things get bigger, the production capability also scales exponentially. This is done to encourage people to expand their operations and grow their empire. That's what I'm talking about. All right? Grow your empire. So for me, my game plan is I want to have as many assets as possible to go through a whole game specific loop. So if we take freighting and mining, so I want to have claim stakes, mining drills, power plants, space stations. I want to have some land in the central space station where I can do some crafting to turn those resources that I've mined and transported into something else that could also be sold on the secondary market or the marketplace at that time. So now this game is going to be so big that nobody's going to be able to just do everything by themselves, but a large chunk of some of these loops I personally want to be able to take care of and then add to and engage in the economy from that standpoint, working with our DAC guilds and the greater community. So we can move on here. Also, we're not done yet. More on claim stakes, and this was one of the key things, and this is kind of the reason why I'm doing this, and I think this series may provide benefit to the community. And let me know in the comments if this does, or if you have any suggestions and things like that. But in the Atlas Brew, Chris, and I quote, this is a direct quote, he says, "There is a claim stake out there that is a hell of a good deal, and I don't think it's been quite understood yet." So these are little things that if you don't pick up on, or you didn't even hear it, you could get left behind. You could get caught out there in the dark as these things change and keep getting iterated upon. So, and during the Atlas, somebody typed in, is he talking about tier 2? I think it's tier 1 claim stakes, because to me, that's probably the best value bang for your buck right now out of all the assets right now. Because A mere claim stake tier 1 can be upgraded. Now, I don't expect it to be easy. It's probably going to take time and a lot of resources, but you could take a tier 1 and upgrade it all the way up to a tier 5. And right now, even today in the marketplace, they're going for like, $20, $24, things like that. So ahead. So if you haven't already looked at it, you might want to start thinking about that as well. Okay, so next thing I want to jump on, and this has been a big topic of discussion lately for a while now, but especially since the transition in escape velocity producing like almost 10 times more R4 ammunition toolkits and so forth. So basically, it's been asked in many different ways, what is the official stance from Automata on bots? Okay, and Michael responds, I can only point you to the terms of service at this time. So, he doesn't really want to get into it, and that's fine. So I just put a couple of excerpts here from the terms of service. And bottom line, of course, they don't want people using bots and taking advantage of it. But as you can see here, as far as this section 7.1 termination, in all games and developers, they have some type of language in their terms of service like this. But I'll just go ahead and read it. You acknowledge and agree that the company, in its sole and absolute discretion, may stop providing support for or access to the services at any time for any reason or no reason, and terminate your right to use services and terminate these terms immediately at any time without notice or liability to you. So be cautious, caveat emptor, buyer beware, proceed at your own risk, however you want to say it. That's what it is. So that concludes this first episode in Star Atlas Chatter with RahMega. I hope you learned something, got caught up to date. That's the purpose of this. I look forward to you hopefully visiting me the next time and further into the future. So RahMega at this point is out. Take care. Go to Bowie.